Okay, got to do my introduction, and here we go. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. Podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. With me today is Dr. Misty McNeill, and she has Prairie Path Foot and Ankle Clinic in Elmhurst, Illinois. And we met each other back in 2013 in Nashville, Tennessee. And first of all, Misty, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast, because I know this is going to be an interesting story that people are going to go, ooh, and probably go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times at some point over the next couple of years. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And the reason I wanted to get, why I wanted to get you on initially was because I hadn't had a lot of podiatrists come on that were into running too much. And I know, and when I was looking at must have been a couple of years ago, just after I met you, and all of a sudden I saw that you did the Walt Disney Wine and Dine half marathon.
Yeah.
And I had that on my bucket list, that I really wanted to go and do a run through Disney. And you've done that. So what was that like? Was that fun?
Well, I've done a lot of Disney races. So when I first started running, I started running because my youngest child, I have 2 sons, and my youngest would not stay in the nursery. So I only got about 15 minutes that they let him cry that I could get a workout in. So I decided to hoof it on the treadmill and see if I couldn't get a good sweat in 15 minutes. And then slowly he started to stay longer and my mileage just started to climb. And so I ran a 5K and then a 10K. And one day I was like, I want to run a half marathon. And I thought, if I run any half marathon, I want it to be a Disney race.
Yeah.
How fun, right? And at that time, the Disney Wine and Dine started at 10 p.m. So, your average half marathon finish time is 2.5 hours. You're finishing after midnight. And then Epcot was shut down and you would be able to have a private party. You got one person to meet you at a private party. And so my husband and our kids were still very little at the time. And that's like such a great memory. He met me. I crossed the finish line minutes after midnight, and we then walked and ate and drank our way around Epcot for the evening, got in about 3 a.m, and such a great experience. No one puts on a race like Disney. Since then, I've run the Disney Marathon twice and 2 Disney half marathons in Disneyland. So those have all been, those are just the most fun races.
Yeah, and that's what it was. I saw some photos of you when you must have been out the first time. Was it 2000, probably around 2013 or something like that?
Yeah, it had to be right. Oh wait, here, I have it here. Let's see, it's in my office. Oh, the year's not on it. Yeah, somewhere in around there, 2000, I think like 2011, 2012. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I saw some photos on your profile, and then I went, oh, that looks interesting. Went and checked it out. Then I saw some videos that were on YouTube that people had filmed. And I'm thinking, how awesome is it? Just because like Disneyland is the happiest place on earth. If no one's been, especially like in Australia, not everyone in Australia gets to go to Disneyland. And we went there in 2012, actually. And I think I had more fun than my daughter. It was just, I had an absolute ball. But when I watch the videos of people running around it, I'm thinking, how cool to be at the 10K mark. You're sort of wondering, have I done the right thing? Next thing, you got Goofy on the sideline clapping as you're going around the corner and people cheering and all these different characters. And I went, that is pretty cool. So they do a lot of different types of runs through the park throughout the year, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I'm a huge Disney fanatic. I've always been a lover of all things Disney. And I agree. I think it's just such a fun place to go. Some people, theme parks are not their thing, but no one does customer service like Disney. You always have a good time. You're always taken care of. And the races are no different. They now have the wine, in addition to the Wine and Dine, they have a Princess half marathon, which is and these are all whole weekends now with 5Ks, 10Ks. They have, you can do the Goofy Challenge, which is a half marathon and a full marathon, the Dopey Challenge, which is 5K, 10K, half and a full.
I think I'd be more dopey. I'll be more of a dopey runner now.
Yeah, right.
Definitely be in the dopey category.
Yeah, when I ran Dopey, my husband said 48.6 miles so that we could all officially say you're dopey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then Andrew Snyder and I did the Disneyland Avengers half.
Yes.
superhero themed, and all the superheroes were out on the course. That one was very fun.
I actually had that written down, that I had Andrew's name written down next to me. And so Andrew Snyder has been on the podcast. I think I can't remember the exact episode, but it was very early on. And I know he is a mad Disney fan as well. He's probably gone more than most people would ever in their lifetime. And whatever he's done now, he's probably going to double that over the next few years. And so he has, I thought he had done one of the runs, but I wasn't quite sure. So you did it together.
We did. Yeah, we did. And his wife, Marie, and my husband stayed back with the kids. He's not a runner. That one was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Always fun to do a meet up with someone. You know, they live across the country, so met up halfway, and it was about halfway for both of us. And it's just such a great time. You know, the Disney races are always fun, but even more fun when you get to do them with a friend.
Yeah, and you said that you've been inspired by Disney a lot. Have you read that book, Be Our Guest?
Yes, I think I've read just about every book about Disney, but yeah, I love their model. I've taken a few of their courses too on leadership and customer service.
Yeah.
And their model for customer service, I mean, it's just, it's pretty rare that you hear someone went to Disney and had a less than stellar experience. They have a way of doing things that I have always emulated my business off of. I want people to leave not just saying, wow, that was I feel my foot feels better, but rather being raving fans of us and saying that, they liked everything from the minute they walked in to the minute they left.
Yeah, it's always been on my bucket list to go to like Disney University and do some of their courses, but it's won't get a chance to do that for the next couple of years. But when we were in Disneyland, just saying the story about being the happiest place on earth, and I have told the story on the podcast before, but I know not everyone listens to every episode, even though they should. But when we were at Disney, it was right towards the end of the day. And even when I think about this, sometimes I get emotional when I think about this, because it was such a moving moment. And there's this young girl, and she was crying, and it's sort of like later, the park wasn't closing, but it was getting close to it. And she was all upset, and the mother's going, "Oh, you'll be okay." And one of the ladies from the park came up and said, "What's wrong? This is the happiest place on earth. You should be feeling great." And the mother explained that she had a bag of all these things that she'd bought, and she'd left it on one of the rides, lost it all. And the mother was going, was saying, "Look, maybe someone will hand it in. We can't afford to go and buy more." And anyway, so the lady was talking to her and said, "So what was in the bag?" So as she's explaining to her, I saw her reach down and flick like a little switch on like her microphone thing. And this person's describing this. She's talking to the young girl, and why did you pick that? And as she's doing it, all of a sudden there was someone in the store going around, grabbing a couple of things. Then another person came in who must have been in one of the other shops, picking up stuff. And all of a sudden, you see him putting this bag together, and they presented it back to her, everything that she'd lost. And I went, wow. Yeah. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't say, "Hey, we'll give this to you at a discounted rate because you lost the first one." They did it for free. And I tell you, the little kid left, big smile on the face. I've told that story so many times. And to me, that is how you run a business.
I agree. Yeah, I have had a few instances like that in Disney, and everyone, they shouldn't leave you surprised, but they do, because I feel like the art of customer service has gotten lost. People focus on metrics and production, and I think really what it comes down to is the way Disney treats. One of my nephews works for Disney, and the way they treat their employees is so stellar that then the employees are able to pass that on to other people and who are customers. And so it not only has to do with that great customer service, but obviously they're treating their employees wonderfully and holding them to a really high standard so that everybody can have that experience.
Yeah, and they don't call them employees; they call them cast members.
Cast members, yeah.
Everybody is a cast member, right up to the person that is handing you that hot dog or delivering it to your table is a cast member, because it's the whole thing is a show.
Yep. So on the Disney tags, when when they're training, it doesn't say training, it says I'm earning my ears.
Yeah.
And so we took a page from that, and we have on our trainees, it says taking my first steps. So that so any person who comes in here knows when someone doesn't have all the answers, or maybe messes something up and we have to fix it, they know that that person's a trainee without calling them a trainee. So I like to take little pieces of it and incorporate it into how we do business too.
So some of the courses you said that you've done with them, and I wasn't planning that we were going to talk a lot about this, but I just, as you can tell, we're both excited about Disney.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that's been to Disney will understand why we're excited. And whenever the thought of Disney, it just puts a big smile on your face.
Right.
And I don't remember getting a photograph with Goofy. He came walking out, and as he walked out, I saw him first, and I was the first one there. And I said, okay. And I yelled out, the line starts here. It's like everyone thought I must have been like an official at Disney, telling everyone where to go. No, I was just the first person in line for the photo. And my wife is standing back just going, you are the biggest kid here. And I went, I know, and I am having a ball.
That's awesome.
And to me, that's what theme parks should be about. Theme parks are about leaving all your troubles behind and just be in the moment and enjoy the moment. And yeah, if you have to wait in line for a while, who cares? You just do it.
Right. There's fun in that too. You know, Disney has a wonderful way of making the queues interesting.
Yeah.
So even when you're waiting in line, it feels like part of the show.
Yeah, I think we were waiting to get on the Nemo ride. We were waiting there in line. There was a fairly big line, but all of a sudden there was a guy who came up and he was asking trivial questions to people about Disney. And because I was a bit of a fan, when he got up to where we were, and we were probably like a 25-minute wait, he said, oh, who knows this? And it was something about Goofy. And bang, I nailed it. He said, you win, and so does your family, and took us right up to the front and put us on early. But the thing is, everybody else that was in the line was clapping when this was happening. No one complained about it. And then we got some passes to go on another ride, and it was like a hand this and you get to move ahead of the line. So it was, they're just always coming up with really, really unique things. So you said you've done some courses with them. What have you done?
So I've done the leadership course and the customer service course. The leadership course is by far my favorite. I learned the most from that. Customer service, I think you can learn a lot from Disney's customer service just by going and experiencing Disney.
Oh yeah.
But they do tell you some of their methodology, some of the, you know, behind the scene things that you don't see. But the leadership course, I mean, the truth is that the beauty of Disney is because it comes from the top. No one is better than anybody in that company, and they truly embody that. So one of the things I learned in that course that for me was an eye-opener was that during their busiest weeks of the year, which are typically Christmas to New Year's, no one in the whole company is allowed to take vacation, meaning the CEO can't go on vacation, everybody has to work because they're their busiest time. So they don't just say, you know, you're at this pay grade, you have to work, I'm at this pay grade, I'll be in the Bahamas or whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they all work during those busy seasons. Even a vice president of finance will put on a uniform and go be a cast member in a shop or work. They all work the floor at some point during the year. That's what they call it. I think they call it the floor. They call it maybe they call it, I don't know exactly what they call it, but they all work in customer facing experiences, which I was really impressed with because it's very easy to be the owner and separate yourself from those things. And I all the time say, do somebody's job before you complain about how they do it, or before you say that's so easy. You know, it's in podiatry, it's really easy for us as doctors to be like, I have all this stress and I have all this work, and my MAs, they just do their job and go home. But do your MA's job for a day and you'll be like, I don't want that job either. You know, every job has positives and negatives. And so I think to be a good leader, you really have to understand and work every single position in your practice or your job, your company. And that's how you really understand what your employees go through.
Yeah, well, we used to do that. We
Used
used to
to
have
do
it.
that.
If a podiatrist started with us, when they started, they had to know how the whole reception ran. We would make them actually every now and then, occasionally, work out in the reception for the day. You need to know what it's like. You need to be able to answer that phone. You need to be able to make an appointment. You need to be able to take the money. You need to be able to make the next appointment. You need to be able to answer the phone and answer all the silly questions that sometimes get asked. And because you never knew, you could rock up at work one morning and the receptionist had a car accident, or the car's broken down, or they've phoned in sick. And all of a sudden you've got two podiatrists on and no receptionist. You need to know how that answering machine works, how to unlock the clinic, get everything set up for the day. And yes, it's going to be awkward until we get someone in there that can come in and replace them for the day. So that was always something we did, that everybody needed to know how everything worked. And me as the business owner, I say there's nothing I will ever ask you to do that I have not done myself probably 100 times. So I knew how everything worked except the bloody autoclave.
I don't think I can autoclave either.
It was one of those things I said, you know what? I am not going to learn how to use it, because if it ever gets to the point where I have to actually do something on the autoclave, it means somebody has not done their job right, because we've got enough instruments and enough everything. So it was the only thing I did not know how to use. But other than that, I knew how everything worked. And we had the same where we taught our receptionist everything we did in the lab. So we showed, because we used to have our own milling machine set up. We showed them how you turn the milling machine on, how it's turned off, not so much doing the orthotic adjustments or anything like that, but just the small things that would actually make our job easier. How to put on covers was nice and simple.
Right.
And they enjoyed doing it.
And I think we don't cross train for the point of, everybody needs to know everybody else's job. I don't anticipate ever putting a medical assistant in a front desk job or putting a doctor at the front desk, but sometimes that happens, as you pointed out. And I think that if you really want to promote that you're a team, you have to be willing to answer the phone if it's ringing off the hook. You have to be willing to, you should empty the garbage. If the bathroom is dirty, you can wipe it down. Like there should be nothing you ask of an employee that you're not willing to do yourself.
Oh, definitely. And that was the purpose of doing that, was, you have someone new start with your business. And this is why we introduced it. You'd have the receptionist there, and for some reason, one of the other receptionists may be on a lunch break. She's dealing with someone in front of her. The two phone lines are ringing at the same time. And you've got a podiatrist standing with her arms folded, looking at them. Okay.
Right. Standing behind them, right? Yeah.
Put your ass on that seat, pick up that phone and answer it. I said, it's not really that hard. So that's when we started realizing, no, everybody, and no one expects, like we used to joke, if you ever saw me at the front reception counter doing something with a patient, expect it to take 3 times longer.
Right.
Because it wasn't my job that I did every day.
Yeah. I always tell them this is above my pay grade. Whenever I'm doing something, like if I answer the phone, I make an appointment, I'm like, give me an extra second here, because it's above my pay grade. I don't actually do this.
Yeah. And the receptionist would always, if I was sitting next to the receptionist answering the phone or dealing with a patient who came in, once the receptionist had finished doing what they're doing, they would then jokingly say to the patient, oh, sorry that you had to deal with the hairy receptionist today. But when things are tight, we've got to do what we've got to do. And they'd have a bit of a laugh. And the amount of times the patients would actually comment, wow, it's really good to see that you guys actually just help each other out like that. There's not like a barrier between this is us and that's them at the front and this is us at the back that wear the white coats and try and look flash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super important. It's good for morale. You got to be a team.
Oh, definitely. So one of the other reasons, so I'm so glad we spoke about all that. It is, it's put a big smile on my face, even though people can't see that on the podcast. But if they watch the video, they will see that I was smiling. So I just need a cough. Oh, that was a nasty one. So we were talking earlier on, and the other thing I worked out, one, I invited you to come on, and you said that you were in the process of selling your business.
Yeah.
And then when we were talking before I press record, we're saying it was an interesting cycle that you've gone through in your career, from being an employee to wanting to own your own business for a reason, to then having a business for a certain period of time, then having your husband involved to the point of selling your business and becoming an employee again. And you've done this full cycle, but there was a reason from each step through that cycle. There was a purpose for it. So that's what I wanted to talk about now was when you went from being an employee to owning your own business, what was the reason for doing that?
Family. So when I always say mom first, doctor second.
Yeah.
My kids will always be first. My family will always be first. And when I worked for another practice, I had to work all the Saturdays. I had to work the late nights. I didn't have any flexibility. And at that time, when I opened my practice, my oldest son was 3, and my youngest son, I was pregnant with my youngest son. Well, I didn't know I was when I made the decision to open practice, but I found out pretty quickly. So my kids are very little, and opening my own practice gave me uber flexibility. So I could pick my schedule. I could pick when I took vacation. And my practice was able to grow with me at a rate that I was comfortable with, rather than somebody telling me when to work. I said when I decided when I was available. And my children, when they were little, were in very little, between my husband and I, we were able to take care of them, because what I did was I worked 2 days a week from basically 1 to 7.
Yeah.
And my husband got home at 5. So we had afternoon care twice a week at home. But other than that, my children were cared for by me or my spouse, which I realize that's a luxury everybody doesn't have, but we chose that. And it did come with trade-offs. Owning your own business and starting from scratch is a slow process. It's
definitely.
Instantly. My salary wasn't huge back then, but
so how important was it when you made the decision to go from employee to owning your own business to make sure you had good cash flow behind you before you made that step?
So I did it a little backwards.
Yeah.
I did not have I didn't have really a safety net, other than the fact that my husband had a good, stable job outside of, in corporate America, outside of the podiatry world, and our income, we could live on that salary.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, so I was taken care of there. But when I opened my own practice, we basically put a chunk of money aside and said, this is what I'll use to spend to get it started. And I started out really slow. I opened I worked in a chiropractor's office. I had one room. I would see 2 or 3 patients an hour, whatever I could cycle through. I had one staff member who worked for me a couple hours a week. I started very slow. And so, just one of my favorite stories about my family, and it ties into how I started my practice, was when my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. My brothers and sisters decided we would write like the 50 things you taught us. And we all wrote like 10 or 12 so that we could, we could put them together. And the one thing we all had on our thing that our parents taught us was to spend less than you make.
Oh, yes.
And some version of that. And I carried that into opening my business, is that I didn't have a ton of patients coming in, but I also didn't have a ton of expenses. I kept my expenses low. And as my practice grew, I allowed, I got into more space. I bought more equipment.
That is such a good point for anyone listening to this who is starting their own business. I had, there was a podiatrist that used to work for me, and I helped him set up his own practice. And when he was setting it up, I said, you're spending too much money. I said, you're going over the top with what you're spending. I said, instead of buying a $50 chair that could sit in the reception, he's buying a $250 chair. And I'm just going, this is just crazy. So he had the business maybe 12 months and then went bankrupt. Had spent over $200,000 setting this thing up and went bankrupt. And it was just, and not only were they spending all this money in the practice, though, then because they had a credit line, they were then using this money to buy all the stuff at home as well. And I'm sitting there just shaking my head. And the thing is, the business was going really well. They could have traded out of it quite easily, but then they took some advice and went, it's easy to declare bankruptcy. And I went, no, not really. So, but they followed this other person family advice, who had never had a business or done anything, but just followed their advice. And then I ended up buying the clinic from the receivers for about 35,000 or something.
Oh, that's full circle.
It was one of those things that I would have much rather them kept it, but
right,
it is what it is. So I think it's a really important point about live within your means. Yeah, spend less than what you make. And my mum brought me up with, like say a credit card. Never put anything on a credit card that you cannot pay off the full balance in full at the end of the month. And if you ever don't do that, she said, you are just crazy. And that we've always lived by that.
Right. Yeah, it served me well in life and personally and in business. So when we started, we didn't have a ton, but I didn't have a ton of patients, but I didn't have a ton of expenses. So it wasn't really, I don't really need a huge safety net. I didn't need a ton of patients coming in. So I was able to kind of, as long as I could pay those expenses and pay myself a little something and keep my skills up, which is important.
Yeah.
I know a lot of women, not only in podiatry, but in other fields, feel they have to work full time or be home with their children. And I was able to do both. Because if you leave, you have to get all that back. There's a lot of medicine is constantly changing and you have to keep those skills up and keep up with the new products and the new procedures. And I was able to do that while they were little. And my goal actually was that by the time my youngest was in kindergarten, that I would be able to work full time if I wanted to. Now, I've never actually truly worked full time. I do work full-time hours running the business and seeing patients, but I'm able to do it when it works for me. So it was not until a few years ago that I went home by 3 almost every day. A couple of years there, I would leave, go pick my kids up from school, bring them back to the office or drop them off at a babysitter's or a daycare. I did that for a couple of years. So I had the ultimate flexibility even as my practice grew. And then the beauty of it is that attracts the people who want that too. So then Dr. Jane joined us and she got the flexibility she wanted and needed. And then a few years later, we had Dr. Doyle join us who now works. So we're basically 3 part-time doctors all working together. So the 3 of us kind of come out to about 1.5 full-time equivalents when it comes to actually seeing patients.
And that's what I think a lot of people forget when you're setting up a business. I think you should always remind yourself, why did you set the business up? And a lot of people say, oh, I set up for this reason. But then once the business gets bigger, they forget why they set the business up in the first place or what their initial goals were.
Yes.
and all of a sudden it can go absolutely crazy. So, and I used to say, I set up my business so that I could make money and have more time with my family. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to have a good business and make good money. But then all of a sudden down the track, I had 5 businesses, 1,800 kilometers apart, about 1,400 miles. I'm traveling around all over the place, these places. And also my daughter, when she was 6, rang me up we were talking on the phone. She said, why are you away all the time? Good point. And it broke my heart. I went, yeah, why am I away all the time? So I then sold everything off and just had one great clinic in Cairns, cut my hours back, employed other people. And I made about the same amount of money, but I was at home a hell of a lot more. So I had lost track of why I set the business up in the first place. And I'm not saying that if someone has 10, 15, 50 podiatry clinics, that's the wrong thing to do, as long as that was what your goal was, I think, when you started.
Yep, that it has to serve you. And I could not have said that any better, but that's exactly what led me to decide to sell the practice
well, that's what I was going to get to. So obviously you had this practice, you've got a group of part-time podiatrists working in that, and the business is serving them for their lifestyle, but all of a sudden it gets to a point that you decided that you wanted to sell the business.
Yeah, it just got too big, what you just said about all of a sudden looking around and being like, is this what I wanted? Like, is this what I intended this to be? And the truth was, it's not all about money, but money can help solve a lot of problems, right? Or it can cover up a lot of problems. And I was but when I looked at it, I really, for the number of hours I was working, I wasn't making any more per hour. I was just working hours to make that money. And I was missing out on, as my kids got older, they didn't need me as much. So I think I just kind of naturally got sucked into more and more of the growing and developing of the business. And, about 2 years ago, I looked around and said, what, what is this? It's kind of a monster. It's kind of out of control. It was right before COVID. And my husband and I, so my husband joined the practice.
Yeah.
He left corporate America and joined the practice to help me, because it was running the practice, doctoring, like running the practice financially as a business, and running the practice clinical side and still doctoring. It's like being the owner of a McDonald's, and you're doing all your own accounting, and you're making all the hamburgers, and you're cleaning the bathrooms. And I mean, that's not how it works in corporate America, right? The CEO does their job, they're the people below them and below them. And that's not how it works in podiatry. We are the CEO, and we're also treating the patients. So he joined us, and that helped for a good long while. It was about a year, right about when COVID hit. We were thinking, okay, I think we've kind of hit the sweet spot. And then after going through about 6 months of COVID, or several months of COVID, we've always had some interested parties in the practice.
Yeah.
Buying podiatry practices is pretty popular right now in the venture capital world, and some of these kind of medium-sized practices buying up little practices, hospitals buying people up. So it got really hot. We've always had a lot of people interested. But about a few months in, we were like, hey, when everybody else got to just go into lockdown, but we had to figure out how to fix all this and how we were going to keep our livelihood going. Like, wouldn't it have been nice to just have it be somebody else's problem? Just kind of open the conversation for that. And when we really looked at it, we thought it's just gotten to the point where we couldn't go away. We couldn't travel. We couldn't really ever, both of us could never really be away. Now we just tied both of us into this business. And so as we started talking, we started having some open conversations about what's the next step for us. And we actually thought about imploding it and just going back to pretty much the good old days, as I say, when it was me and one employee and a couple days a week. And maybe right now we're this big 3,000 square foot clinic, maybe go down to 1,500 square feet. We talked about just imploding the whole thing, and him running the whole front desk shebang and having one MA. But the truth is, I really like the other two doctors I work with, and I like my staff. I couldn't see just cutting everybody out, and I wanted to give them a next step. So one of my doctors is pretty young. She's still in her she's in her young 30s. And so she's got a lot of time to practice. And so I started looking at other groups that might be able to, where I might be able to then take and reverse. And, before I was the owner because I wanted time for myself. Now I want to not be the owner so I can have time for myself.
Yeah. And it's like, it is a cycle. And we said that earlier on, before I press record, that you get your business to a certain point, and I think as a business owner, if anyone ever tells you, oh no, you can just own the podiatry clinic and you can just walk away and go and drink lattes on the beach, in another state or another town and not even have to worry about it, it's not really the truth. It's always there. And most days it's great. Most times running your own business is a lot of fun, but there's always that commitment. And like when I met you over in Nashville, I used to go to America every year for about a 2-week period. Every time I went, every night I'd get back to the motel room and I'd be checking emails, returning phone calls, looking at some paperwork, jumping online, looking at the diary. There would always just be that little bit of commitment. 2012, when I was in Disneyland, I'd have a great day, but I was still coming back to the motel, doing stuff at night, making phone calls and all that. When I decided to sell the business, I then did my 2-week trip to America that I did every year, and I didn't check anything. I went for 2 weeks. I got home, and from the conferences I went to, and my wife said, how was the trip? I went, that was amazing. Just to not have to answer an email, return a phone call. I said, it was such a good feeling. But I was at that point when it was just the right time for me, which it sounds like it was the right time for you.
Yeah. There's a lot of debate about when's the right time, because I've had a lot of my colleagues, as I've told them, or even friends, say, oh, you're only in your 40s. But we just sent our first off to college. We're in Chicago, and he went to University of Florida. And we'd like to be able to pick up and go visit him. We'd like to get a condo on the beach down there. And those things are not, as you pointed out, we are always working. It might not be, owning a business is a wonderful thing because you get to pick when you work, but the work has to get done no matter what. There's nobody else to just say, well, I'm just going to leave that to somebody else. You have to get the work done. So even when we would be away, we'd still be, like you said, answering emails, taking care of things, hoping something major didn't happen while we were gone and somebody else would have to try to muddle through it. So so the timing is just good, because I don't want to stop practicing. I'm not looking to leave podiatry. I love what I do. I just need to find a way to get it under control. Like I want to be that person who gets to come in, see their patients, do their notes, and go home.
But I think the other thing you said earlier on, though, when you said, spend less than what you make. If you do that over your career, you can be in your 40s and be in a really good position financially, which is exactly where I was. I sold the practice when I was 50, but I was in just a really, really financially great spot. Now, I could have kept my practice and kept it for the next 5 years. And instead of having a 4-bedroom house, had a 6-bedroom house. Yep. Or instead of having Alexis could have had a Porsche. But to me, I was like, I'm really happy where I am. So I am in a spot where financially I'm great. Now's the time to sell and then start doing some of the other things that I want to just enjoy. And like I said, I haven't left podiatry. Now I do coaching in podiatry. So I'm still in podiatry. I actually really, really love the profession. I think it's fantastic. So I'm not prepared to just go and lie on a beach under a tree and drink Coronas yet.
Just sometimes.
Eventually. You got to do that occasionally, but eventually I will.
So it's interesting that you say that, because the reason my husband was able to leave corporate America and join us is because, let's say he went from a nice fat paycheck to pretty much like zero, because we don't have as a practice, we don't have the money to pay his salary. So he just worked to have a happy wife, but he was able to do that because he was smart in the way he put away in his 401ks and retirements when he was younger. And so almost 3 years ago now, when we would tell our friends he was leaving corporate America, they would act like we had just lost our marbles.
Yeah.
But I'm totally with you. We live well within our means. We have a nice house. We live in a great suburb. Our kids' college is set. We've prepared for that. We have everything we need and most of what we want. Now, could we be going, to the Maldives every year on vacation, and like you said, owning a Porsche and maybe having 3 vacation homes if I continue to work like I work? But I once read this quote that somebody said, instead of having great vacations, why don't you just have a life where the vacation is like worked into it?
Yeah.
And love that concept. Like, instead of like running away from your life, why not find, like, you find such happiness in coaching. You love that. I like working with young doctors. I like mentoring young doctors and teaching them to be to make their patients better and be successful. The combination is great. I love seeing patients. I love sports medicine. My practice is 99% sports medicine and pediatrics.
Yeah.
And I love that. Those days, no matter how hard they are, no matter how many patients I have, it really serves me. And I wanted to get back, I really wanted to get back to that. And the truth is that if you're happy with what you're doing and you're not overextended financially, it gives you so much freedom.
Oh, definitely. Well, right now, I am, just family things that have gone on, and I'm now technically the full-time carer of my grandson. Now, if I was still in my practice right now and wasn't financially in the spot I am, that would have been really, really difficult to do. But now, and because I have got the flexibility with what I do when I work and when I don't work, recording podcasts and doing all those sorts of things, I have the ability that I can be looking after him. And I didn't realize how much work, I forgot how much work it is to have children. I look back at what my wife did with our daughter, and I'm like, my God, I think I forget, because I was at work. I'd get up in the morning and I'd give the baby a kiss goodbye and go off to work. But I didn't realize they're demanding little buggers.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Especially right now. But in the heart of COVID that we were talking earlier about the lockdown, it was nicer to have teenagers because they did their online schooling. I didn't have anything, I didn't have much to do with it. My younger partner, her kids were little. She had to sit with them and do math and a lot more work. Yeah. And those toddlers, I don't know how old your grandson is, but they're a lot of work. They're busy.
Well, my youngest daughter, fortunately, she was at home when we went to lockdown. She got a desk sorted out, and she was in grade 10. So it was we didn't have to do anything. It was great. But we had friends who had kids in grade 1 and 2, and they were going, my God, we cannot wait for the schools to open back up. It was a lot of work. So where do you see? So you're selling the business. It's going to give yourself a little bit of freedom. What are you going to do with your extra time off now that your head will be clear from the business? Are you going to take up a hobby? Are you going to get into running a little bit more? Have you thought about what you're going to do with the extra time?
I'm going to sleep. I feel like that's been lost the last few years, but no, it's something I definitely have grappled with. When people are ready to retire, which I am nowhere near. I have picked a wonderful partner. That was the best part about the whole process, is having multiple interested parties. I got to pick the group that I thought I could still grow and develop in. So it doesn't have to be all doctoring. If I want to mentor younger doctors, I can do that in this large group. If I want to work with marketing, do podcasts, I can do those things. So I love that. That I think anybody who's thinking of selling, that is super important. Don't look at just the number. The number is never going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is knowing that what you worked for and the practice that you built is in good hands, and that you can continue to do whatever it is you're passionate about. So when it comes to outside of podiatry, it turns out I don't have a ton of interest. So I hear that when people are ready to retire, they have the same kind of like, oh, what am I going to do with myself?
Woodworking.
I still have one son at home, and so I'll enjoy his last few years of high school and going to all his sports and his events. I'm hoping to travel more. Once we get out of this crazy lockdown, this crazy situation we're in, I'm really hoping to travel more. There's so many wonderful places, both in the US and outside of, I'd like to go to, and I just haven't had a lot of time or energy to do those things. I love, I like running. I backed off from running a few years ago because of a back injury, but I'm really hoping to step it back up and get back into it. I love my Peloton. I don't know if I have any Peloton fans listening, but I love my Peloton bike. I love to work out. I think the beauty is I'm not looking to fill all my days. I'm just open to what happens. And I'm looking forward to spending more time with my parents who are getting older. They're 78 this year. They
live close by?
They do. They live about 45 minutes away. But when you're working full time, and you have kids at home, it's busy kids, there's not a lot of time. So I'm looking forward to spending more time with them. I'd love to take up a hobby. I'm open to suggestions. I want to see what comes my way and what interests me. I'd like to take some classes, maybe learn another language. I feel like the list is kind of scattered and all over the place, but I just want to see what the universe sends my direction.
And I think that's a consideration. Anyone who is building a practice up, and whether they're thinking about selling it soon or in the next 10 or 15 years, is really think about the transition afterwards. So when I went to sell mine, I remember sitting down with my wife and I said, okay, we've been offered this, substantial amount of money to sell. What do you think? And we both looked at the money and went, okay, the money is great. I mean, the money was 3 times more than anyone was ever going to offer for it. But we sat down, we thought, it's not just about the money. It's what are you going to do once you do sell the business? Because she said, you can't work for them. I said, oh, I know that. I said, I just wouldn't be able to do that. But because I was already doing a little bit of coaching, I'd already written, the world's best podiatry book. It's no secret there's money in podiatry, even though not every review says that. I had other things that I was doing that I wanted to pursue further. And I think it's really important before selling is have some idea of what you're going to use that time for, not just sell it and then go, oh, now what? I think it's just super important.
I definitely have had a few of those like now what moments, but I'm not, as my sisters would tell you about me, they always say I fill every moment. Like I have a planner and I like everything full. I don't like any open space. So a couple of years ago, my New Year's resolution was to have 1 unscheduled hour every single day. And that was a real challenge for me, for like someone who is a doer and on the go. I get up at 5:30 in the morning and work out, and I'm going until I go to bed.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge to just kind of back off. And
you schedule your day that much?
Pardon me?
Do you schedule your day that much?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My planner starts at 5:30 in the morning. And it's scheduled. I only schedule myself till 9:30 at night. I do try to wind down and go to bed at 9:30.
Yeah.
Or go to bed at 9:30, but I start winding down. I'd love to go to bed at 9:30. But I do. I schedule literally hour for hour. And if I have open space, I have this is a terrible trait, but I actually have a list of things that will take me, like things I'm hoping to accomplish. So things that will take me 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and an hour, and then bigger projects.
Yeah.
But if I see on my schedule, I have like a half hour open, I'll flip to the 30-minute list and be like, what would I like to do there? I would never give myself any space. And so a couple years ago, that was my New Year's resolution, was to try to give myself an hour every day that was unscheduled, that I just put nothing in. And I've gotten more used to that, just having open time. And now I tend to use that more for like meditation or yoga, even reading a ton more. This year, I challenged myself to read 47 books in my 47th year. So I'm trying to do things that don't require you to be on the go and be, it doesn't always have to be productive or accomplished. Some things are just being more quiet in your own head and taking time to just decompress for self-care. So I did not give a lot of thought of what I would do. Even my children asked me when we approached them and said, we're thinking about selling the business, and what do you guys think of that? My youngest said, does that mean you'll be around more?
Yeah.
And I said, it does. And my oldest said, what will you do with yourself? I don't think he really remembers, like he just doesn't know. Neither one of them really know a life without me owning my own business. I started when the oldest was 3. So, and I have thought long and hard about that. And I just sort of decided that I have a list of things I'm interested in, but I don't want to fill every minute. I don't want to say on Mondays, I'm going to do this, and Wednesdays, I'm going to do this, and Fridays, I'm going to do this. I want to have time that is unscheduled, that I can spend with friends and family, things I feel like I've kind of robbed myself of. I never say somebody robbed me of it, because I've had full control from day one here. But I got to the point where the practice is running me and running my schedule, and I let that happen. So I've lost a lot of that time that I want to get back.
Yeah, and I think in reflection, when you look back at how you use your time, like I can say, even with myself, I would normally be in here in my home office. And if I was doing a podcast, I'd start at say 6 a.m. is usually when I start the first podcast, if I'm doing one. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't walk out of here till at least 6 p.m. I'd be in here 12 hours a day, because I love doing what I do. I just really enjoy creating and writing and helping and talking to people. It's so much fun. But now that I've had my grandson with me, and so much of my day that I usually had, about 70% of it is now taken up with him, I'm still getting things done. And I'm going, wow, I've been obviously wasting a lot of time as well throughout the day. So it's made me realize that once he gets sorted out, and I'm not sort of looking after him as much as what I am, that I really have to use that time more efficiently, or start doing other things. Yeah, play the guitar more. Yeah, go to the bloody movies during the day. Just go to the movies, because I enjoy going to the movies. Just doing other things and decompressing my brain, so that when I do put it back under pressure to do something, I think it's going to produce better ideas.
Yeah, it's just like exercise. When people are training for a marathon, we have taper weeks where we back off and take it a little easier. And every runner has trouble with taper weeks, with cutback weeks, because their runners are typically high achieving personalities. So they want more, they want faster, and you keep climbing. But cutting back actually helps your muscles recover and your mind recover, and then you're ready to hit that next week even harder and faster. And so I always think about life, business that way, is that you have to decompress and you have to take time to back off. It's why physician burnout is so high, because we go and go and go, and we don't take enough time off, and we don't spend enough time on self-care. We don't have enough time to go to the movies in the middle of the day, right? Who's ever heard of that? So I think it's like such a great, your retirement doesn't have to be in retirement. And that's what I'm realizing is I'm hoping that this company I'm selling to allows me to practice for another 10 or 15 years and just love what I do, but just only do it 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, I remember a few years back, and it was during the day, I think I was still working, had the clinic, and I blocked about 3 hours in the middle of the day. And I rang my wife up and said, "You want to go to the movies?" And she was supposed to work at the clinic. I said, "Don't worry, I've got it all sorted." So we both went and saw, I can't remember what the movie was that we saw. And when we came out, then we had some lunch. She goes, "I feel like we're playing hooky, that we're actually
for sure.
We're wagging school at the moment." She goes, "It just feels so wrong. We should be at the clinic. And here we are at the movies. I hope nobody's seen us, that we're not actually working." But that night we were talking and laughing about it, going, how good was it just to take that couple of hours off in the middle of the day for ourselves? And that's what I'm learning with all the spare time now, is, like you said, like an athlete. I watch people at Muay Thai when they're leading up to a fight, and they'll go really hard, but that week leading up to it, they might have one hard session on the Monday if they're fighting Saturday, and then the rest of the week it just really starts to taper off. And that's when I enjoy actually going more, because they're easier on everybody, because like you said, they've got to heal, they've got to repair, and then when they go in the ring, they're ready for it. And I think as business owners, we need to taper every now and then, have a bit of downtime, especially when you go on a holiday, and instead of working 38 to 40 hours a week, you work 60 hours a week for 2 weeks leading up to holiday, and you go away for 2 weeks, and the first week you're just trying to get your brain back in order because you've burnt it out, and then you find it just as you're about to relax, you get back to work and do it again.
Yeah, in the US, we don't take vacations for very long. People tend to take like long weekends. I think they say the average vacation is 4 to 5 days now. And we just took our first 2-week vacation a couple of years ago. I took a whole month sabbatical from practice. And I have great partners. I told them they could do it at any time too. I'd help cover for them. But that was I didn't go anywhere. We were just local, but we actually went away for 2 weeks. And I said the exact same thing. I said, it was just enough time to get decompressed to recompress.
It's crazy.
Just enough time to forget about it. And then all of a sudden I had a couple good days, and then I started thinking about it again. But when you only take 4 or 5 days, you don't even have enough time to ever turn it off. And so I feel like, we just don't take enough time when we're young and we can enjoy it, when our kids are young, to enjoy our grandchildren. And, my father retired when he was 55. He was a truck driver. So hard life, not an easy profession. And he retired at 55. And when he was in his I'm not sure exactly when, but I want to say late 60s, he was diagnosed with lymphoma, and he's doing great. He said he's been in remission and out of remission and back in remission now, knock on wood. But he's doing great. But he said the first time when he was diagnosed, I'm so happy I had all those years that I didn't keep working all of that and then find out I'm sick. And so I feel like the tide is changing, and maybe even COVID helped us a little bit to really start thinking about what matters to us.
I think so.
You know, as you said, get back to why do you have the practice? Why do you have that job? Why are you, you know, is that what you love? Great. Then drive, you know, 50 minutes each way or 2 hours each way, whatever it is. But if that's not what you love and not what serves you, then find a way. There's always a way. That is what I learned through this whole selling process was some of the companies you know, our hospital system, they were like, sure, we'd love to buy you. But then they're like, and you're going to work on Saturdays, and you're, you know, the deal on the other side was not great. This company welcomed us with open arms as 3 part-time doctors and said, like, you're doing great. We're not gonna, you know, it's not broke. We're not gonna fix it. Like, we're just hoping to come in and make you more efficient and take some of this off your plate, which, so I think there's always an answer for people. You just have to keep, you have to be very clear in what you want. When you figure out what you want, then you find how to get it, just like you did.
Yeah, well, my dad, his plan was to retire at 55, and then he died at 49. So he never got there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just never got there. And so that was always in the back of my head that he didn't make it to 50. So when I had the opportunity to sell, and it was leading up to me turning 50, I just went, this is a no-brainer for me. And it goes back to what we said originally, spend less than what you make, and over a period of time, create some wealth and something behind you. Don't spend all your money. And I think it helps too if your partner's on the same page with you. Like I remember my wife, I may have said this before on a podcast, I was bitching and complaining one day when everybody else had a flat screen TV and we still had the big box looking television set. And I was spewing, why don't we have a big flat screen TV? Everybody else has got a flat screen TV. And one day she turned around and she said, you know what? Do you know that everybody else that we know that has a flat screen TV? She went, yeah. She says, we're the only ones that own a house and they don't. And I went, good point. I know I married you for a reason. And now I've got flat screen TVs everywhere, and big flat screen TVs. So it was one of those things, is that delayed gratification. Yeah. Spend less than what you make. Don't go into debt for anything. Just, and long term, then you can be in a position when you get an opportunity knocks on your door like that. I was waiting for the dog to bark then, because it usually does it whenever I knock, is you can be in a position to say yes or no. Does it suit your lifestyle? Do you want to keep working, or do you not want to keep working? So I think that's all money really does, just give you options and choices.
Yeah. And if you don't have to be a slave to anybody.
No.
And I'm not talking about your boss, or you don't have to be, when you are in debt, it gives you pressure to do things you might not normally, what aren't in line with your values. So I know people in medicine who are like taking on second moonlighting jobs, or they're working a part-time job somewhere because they have the huge house and the awesome car. And I never wanted to be that person. But, you know, luckily I was raised in a home where it was never taught. So I never thought about it.
Yeah.
When it came to sending our kids to college, you know, I really wanted to be able, it was something that for me, I really wanted to be able to pay for their school. It was something my parents couldn't do for us. They had 5 kids, but it was just something they couldn't do. They helped with college, but they didn't pay for it in full. And I always wanted to be able to pay for college. And it was so great when my son said, I love this school. Like, this is the one, I know this is it, that I didn't have to really worry about it. Like I didn't have to, I see all these parents on these Facebook boards being like, oh my gosh, how do I take out these loans and how do I do this? And I'm so happy that we lived a more meager lifestyle so that we could afford the things that matter to you. But you have to know what matters to you. If the fancy car matters to you, get the fancy car.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you want a Lamborghini, get a Lamborghini. If you want, a mansion on the canal with a massive big boat out the front, and whenever you're in that boat, you're sitting in your mansion looking out the water, and it puts the biggest smile on your face, then you should bloody well buy it. If that's what is going to make you happy, and then you'll put the work in, and you will eventually own it. But don't buy the Lamborghini and don't buy the big house or the flash boat if you're only doing it because you're trying to show off or make yourself out to be better than what you actually are, because long term just affects your enjoyment later in life.
And there's always going to be somebody with more.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's only one person in the world who can say they have the most, right? And there's probably only 10 who can say they live this ridiculous, or 10, the top 1% that lives this ridiculous, extravagant lifestyle. The rest of us are always going to have someone whose house is a little bigger, whose car is a little nicer, who has one more vacation home, whatever it is. So you have to figure out what matters to you. And once you do, like you said, you put in the work to get it. And when you do that, then life just becomes a little easier. But you have to be clear about your goals and what they are. And I've always been super clear. One of the things that I've always loved is writing out a 5-year plan. And ironically, every time I've written out a 5-year plan, before 5 years, I've reached all of that, even though I don't look at them every day and go, oh, I want X, Y, and Z. But all of a sudden, 3 years in, I'll read it and be like, huh, I did all that. That's great. And ironically, I'm 3 years into a 5-year plan that said I would sell my practice, and I'm just doing it a little earlier. The right opportunity came along a little earlier than I anticipated.
No, I think it's fantastic. So Misty, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast. Before we wrap up, do you have one final tip? Anyone that's listening to this at the moment, do you have one final tip that you would say, if they bumped in you on a Monday morning, say, give me a tip. Give me a tip for life, work, career. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, two, and one we've touched on a few times. Live within your means. That's my number one. I try to teach my kids that. And number two is be clear about what serves you. If it's not a definite yes, it's a no.
That is fantastic. So Misty, thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing your story, and also talking about the whole Disney thing earlier on. That was fantastic. I'm actually considering I'm going to split this to being 2 episodes. I'm going to do a shorter episode just about the Disney side of things, because that was really cool, but it was completely separate to what I wanted to talk to you about, the transition of going through your business. So I'm going to split this to 2 different episodes, like a short episode, Disney, and a longer episode, your journey into ownership and then selling, because I think it's been fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was very, it's actually enlightening for me to kind of walk the journey and to go back and think about it all. And I haven't, it's been so long since I did a Disney race. So it was nice to relive that.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.